everybody. My name is Heather Horlocker, and I decided to do the Liberian culture for my final project. And Liberia is in Africa. So, the core foods in Liberia consist of rice as the main one. They eat rice with pretty much everything for every meal. It's usually like the main part of every meal, and then other things are added to it. Fufu is also another one of the core foods that they have, and if you weren't sure what fufu is, like I wasn't, um, it's shown in the bottom picture there, and it's that big blob of like, looks like dough, and it's made from like starchy vegetables, yams, cassava, plantains. Basically, what they do is they grab some with their hand and like roll it in a ball, pinch some off, and dip it in like the rest of their dish, like the stew or the soup that they have, and then eat it from there. And it's super like chewy as a texture, and it feels kind of rubbery. But they eat this with their stews and things like that with a lot of what they have. And it's usually within the dish. There are times where they'll have it in a separate bowl, but a lot of times they'll just have it like in the same bowl as the stew and everything. They'll just set it on the side there and just go from there. And then the complementary foods are vegetables like cassava leaves, potato greens, bananas, butter pears also. And then fish is also eaten a lot, and it's a big ingredient for a lot of their stews and soups as well. So the flavor profile in Liberia is pretty crazy. It's known for its complex flavors. They use a lot of herbs and spices to make up the flavor that they have. And the dishes are all spicy, salty, and sweet, which is interesting. My brother actually is serving a mission in Liberia right now currently, and so he's been able to share with me a lot of what the food is like there and how his adjustment was to it, which has been super cool, which is why I chose to do Liberia. But he said it was something he had to get used to. The flavor was just crazy because usually you have like a spicy dish or a sweet or a salty. They're not all usually together, but in a lot of the dishes they just throw in a bunch of seasonings and it's like all in one. So it's a super unique flavor. So a lot of these ingredients include thyme, basil, parsley, bay leaves, scotch bonnet peppers, habaneros, and tomato paste. They don't have access to a lot of the fresh like tomatoes and things like that, so they use a lot of the pastes to fill in place of that. And shown in the picture is scotch bonnet peppers. That's what those look like. But yeah, they use a lot of peppers for a lot of their meals. So, the meal patterns and meal timing there, it's similar to what we do, but they typically only eat 2 meals a day, and a lot of their meals are the same things: rice, stews, greens, and shown there is them dishing out that food. So they have a bunch of rice. In that other bowl is like the mix of the stew with a lot of the herbs and the greens and the seasonings and stuff that they throw on top of it. It doesn't look the most appetizing, but this is what they eat and this is what they love. So at least one meal, if not both meals, consist of rice and a soup or stew that's poured on top. So, again, rice is the staple of the Liberian diet. They eat it multiple times a day because they can pair it with things, or they can just eat it plain or eat it dry, actually, as well. So, yeah, 2 meals a day. Usually it's just like a big lunch or a big dinner that they have. So, the family food dynamics in Liberia: women and girls are in charge of preparing all the meals and all the food and getting everything ready. And in Liberia, a lot of families live with extended family as well. So there's a bunch of people under one roof. They're cooking for a bunch of people. And They also will share bowls and things like that. So, unlike here, where you kind of have your own plate and you dish things out to yourself and just sit and eat your plate, a lot of times they'll just share a big bowl or a big couple bowls and just eat out of the same bowls. So, um, they typically will eat together, families will eat together. Not usually at a table, they'll kind of just sit wherever across the house, unless they are sharing from the same bowl, which happens a lot. And shown here is the fufu on the left, rice, and like the paste, the stew. That's like all of the staples right there in one photo. And then on the right there is my brother actually with a Liberian family before they're going to be eating. So, learning about religious food traditions in Liberia was super interesting because, as of more recently, Christianity is one of the main religions there, the most common. So, they'll feast on Sundays, go to church if there's a church nearby them. They make like some dessert foods on Sundays, like rice bread, sweet potato pone, ginger beer they drink during the meal. And then coffee is actually only served on special occasions, which was interesting. So the photo on the right there is rice bread. And then another thing that I thought was super interesting that my brother has shared with me as well is that the Liberian people believe in witches, wizards, spirits, evil spirits, traditionalists. Um, so they believe that these spirits and these witches and wizards cast diseases on people and prevent the people from getting treatment and getting help and finding a diagnosis, and that they control a lot of the health that people have there. So, a lot of times they will use certain herbs and things that I'll talk about on the next slide that they believe helps with being cursed by these witches and things for their health. So I listed a bunch of the herbs and the medicinal plants that the healers use in Liberia down below. I'm not going to say them all because I don't know how to pronounce a lot of those, but those are listed there. And then the picture on the right shows somebody preparing all the herbs and everything. And the foods that the Liberian people believe maintain their good health include rice, starches, fruits, tropical fruits, vegetables, fresh vegetables, and then local fish and meat. So that's why they eat these with pretty much every meal. They believe that these are the things that maintain their good health. Okay, for the nutrition status report, in Liberia, 1 out of 3 children that are under the age of 5 are stunted in their growth or are too short for their age, which is because they don't have enough nutritional food over there that they're eating when they're that young, and they're catching so many illnesses all the time that they're stunted and they're too short for their age, and they're underfed. But obesity is also present in Liberia, just it's not super common. According to the World Health Organization, 2.8% of adult males are obese and 10.6% of adult females are obese in Liberia. So there's not a ton of people, but it is common, not common, it is present there. In 2023, Liberia's infant mortality rate was about 47 deaths per 1,000 live births, and Liberia's child mortality rate was 85 deaths per 1,000 live births that are with children under the age of 5. Liberia also has one of the world's highest rates of maternal mortality with 661 deaths per 100,000 live births. And continuing on, looking at the Healthy Newborn Network, it's stated that Liberia has a 14% rate of low birth weight for babies born under 2,500 grams, and also a 14% rate of preterm birth, which include babies that are born before 37 weeks. That's what that means. And in Liberia, 22,000 babies are born preterm every single year, and 1,100 of those are born before 28 weeks. So they have a bunch of premature babies there. They just don't get at the nutrition and everything they need to get them through a full term healthy pregnancy. So a lot of times they'll have underweight babies, or they'll have premature babies. And only 50% of babies that are under 6 months old are exclusively breastfed, which I thought was interesting, that only half of them are. So here is a counseling handout I made that specifically is for Liberian adults that have diabetes. So you can see eating lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, beans, and nuts is suggested, which they do eat a lot of fruits and vegetables there, so that's good. Incorporating fish into their meals is a really good source of protein and healthy fats. They also eat a ton of fish, so that's really good. And then limiting dairy products and red meat is recommended. It's also said to use extra virgin olive oil instead of butter or other oils that they have. And eating lentils are high in fiber and protein. These are good for them as well. And then on the bottom there, I listed some diabetic-friendly Liberian dishes that were suggested. Fufu, Ugale, Banku, and Nishima. I'm probably pronouncing some of this wrong. These are all made with whole grains and low glycemic staples like maize, millet, sorghum, plantains, and yams. So these are suggested for Liberian adults with diabetes. So Liberian food habits you don't see very much here in the US. It hasn't adapted as well as other cultures that are seen more common, like Mexican food, for example. You see it everywhere. Even Indian food, I feel like they have a lot of restaurants now that are growing here around the US. I feel like you don't see as many African places, but specifically Liberian cuisine, definitely you don't see very much. It's hard to find. And if you find it, it's hard to find a place that gives a really authentic quality of. So, doing some research though, I did find that there is an African food store here in Orem actually. And there are a couple food places that claim to be African cuisine, and I listed those there. Um, so, from reading some of the reviews and stuff, again, it's not the most authentic of people that know, but it gives a good idea and a good kind of culture and vibe about the African cuisine. So, my personal summary and reflection, I learned a ton through this final project and this research, and also talking with my brother helped me a lot to learn a lot about this. So, it was cool to include a lot of his pictures as well. Like, this is a photo from him on the right here of something that they were eating, which to us probably does not look very appetizing. I know it doesn't to me, but this is what they eat, this is what they love. They get super nutritious things from it, and herbs and things like that, spices. So it was so fun to learn about all this and learn about how, we have some similarities of like when we eat and eating together as a family and things like that, but I feel like there were a lot more differences in their culture beliefs, religious beliefs, but also just the food that they have. Their Liberian diet is so different from us, and I think the biggest reason is because they don't have access to a lot of the foods and ingredients and fresh fruits and things that we have a privilege of here in the US. So, the main takeaway I learned is that they eat rice all the time. They repeat meals a lot with what they have available to them. They don't always get a lot of protein unless it's fish. And yeah, I had a great time doing this and researching, so thank you so much.